Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz game number 270. I was white here and I was trying out knight f3, the Reti opening. So let's take a look at this. We get a very unusual opening because my opponent plays f6 immediately, which has no entries in the database. And then apparently e4 is the best move here. But I played d4, which is still good enough for some advantage, and then we're just out of the opening book entirely. So I might as well look at the notation page here. My opponent continues with h6, and you'll see right away the engine has the idea of knight h4. And I assume that's to jump into this square g6 and make black's pieces uncomfortable over there. Let's take a look at it. I might as well. Also, e4 is an idea. So let's take a look at these two ideas. I say e4 first. H5 or d6. Let's try d6. Trying to make some sense out of the play. And then knight h4. Let's see how these work together. H5 or bishop e6. Let's try bishop e6. So that he can drop his bishop back to f7 if he needs to, because I think queen h5 there is a threat. So just knight g6, dropping in there, rook to h7. Yeah, just a way to make black's position uncomfortable, I guess, getting your pieces out of getting his pieces all out of position. And bishop d3 just developing. Okay, that's probably the way I should have played. Instead, I just went with my just Reti setup because I was planning to play the Reti opening. And you'll see at various times, again, the computer always comes up with this idea of e4 and knight h4, right there again. But I'm ignoring that idea and just playing my Reti setup, which leaves me with some advantage, but maybe not as much as I should have gotten because of black's peculiar play here. So I just end up with a typical or only slightly better than average opening advantage. So I'm developing my knight to a3 here to defend against the threat of knight to c2 check, forking the king and the rook. Otherwise, I mean, it's not a particularly great square for that knight, but I needed to attend to that threat in some way. And I castled to get away from that. And there's an exchange of pawns. And I moved my knight to h4. I still didn't quite have the idea of dropping the knight in here. Mostly I was moving the knight to h4 as a way to win a tempo on the bishop and maybe play e5 to block out the threats on this diagonal. In this position, I thought a bit about the move queen to b3, but I didn't think about the suggested move of the engine here. This is another nice tactical idea. Of course, you should always be on the lookout for these forks, right? You're attacking the knight and the king simultaneously. Now he has a move that doesn't lose immediately, but you can push on with d5, and if he takes, take back, and knight takes, and then rook d1, you can pin this knight. So now you've got multiple pins working for you. And looks like black is not going to be able to survive this. In fact, there's an immediate threat of e4 or just bishop takes knight. I guess bishop takes knight, how can he defend that? He cannot defend the knight. Yeah, so forget this e4 idea. Just bishop takes knight. Cannot be defended. So black is losing a piece in this position. So anyway, that would be the best way to play here. And I was still thinking about the wrong things in this position. I play e4, and game goes on. He goes knight e to c6, supporting his knight. And now I could deliver this check on the other side, taking advantage of all these open lines against his king, also to some advantage. But instead I play this horrible move, knight to c2. So this is when the game changes from, I was sort of easily winning all through this opening part, and now it's a game where black has a slight edge because I just abandoned this pawn basically. After he takes the knight, I have to take back, and this guy is just hanging here. So he can grab that pawn, and he does. And now he's got a slight edge, but he doesn't do the best he could with it. He plays b6, and now even though I'm a pawn down, looks like I have enough compensation for the pawn with my better piece placement, and I've got open lines for my bishops. His pawns are still looking a bit strange over here. Okay, so anyway, I continue developing with rook d1, pinning this knight. I thought that would be a good idea. And now we get into a phase here where I just pile up the pressure on the knight. Pretty straightforward. And eventually, right here, he should probably take my knight. That's the top choice here. But even so, it says that I've managed to equalize in spite of being a pawn down. He castles. Also a reasonable move. And so I get my pawn back now. And he has to move his queen away, so he went to e7, looking at my pawn, and I decided to push my pawn on to e5. I thought it'd be interesting to try and mess up the pawns on his king's side, and it's tactically justified because there's a discovered attack on his rook, so he needs to do something about that. The engine says he should give up the exchange here. Oh, it's not giving up the exchange. This is an interesting point. He can take the pawn with a threat against my rook. I take his rook. He takes my rook. And what's the count and the amount? Bishop d5. Well, I get a good post for my bishop. King h8. And maybe I can win this pawn. Okay. And so we'll get into kind of a similar situation as the game. This is 5 pawns to 5 pawns, where there's 2 on the king side and 3 on the queen side, and I have 3 on the king side and 2 on the queen side. So a little bit of asymmetry in the position, but basically material equality. So instead, he just moved his rook, and further exchanges ensued. And when he takes back with the queen here, I guess taking back with a pawn was not a great option. No, he could have taken back with a pawn. That might have been better. Queen takes f6, allows me to get the queens off, and then he's got these weak pawns around his king. So I throw in this move, bishop d5 check. He goes king g7, and rook e1. And now we're in a phase where we have a rook and bishop endgame, where the bishops are the same color. And it should be about even, maybe a slight edge to white, because I can get to the 7th rank sooner. If he tries to... Oh, okay. Well, he could keep me from getting to the 7th rank by playing rook d7. So let's see how this might go. Then bishop c6, harassing the rook. Rook d4, going after the pawn. Rook e7 check. King h8. Yeah, so it looks like I managed to get to the 7th rank anyway, and then bishop to b5, holding on to the pawn. And then I could pick up this pawn. So that's one way it might go. He played king h8 immediately, and that allows me to get my rook onto the 7th rank. And then he goes with the move c5. And I have a little bit of pull through here, so I pick up a pawn. And there's some maneuvering with the pieces. I just need to get my extra pawns rolling here somewhat cautiously. I thought, the engine says I should play a4 immediately. Oh, I did play that. Okay. a4 is a good idea, just trying to clamp down on the b5 square and keep this pawn permanently backwards, so it's a weakness in white's camp. And then I can push forward on the king side and try and take advantage of the weaknesses over here. So even though the material is even, actually this is a winning endgame for white with careful play. Of course, I don't I don't play it entirely correctly, and you'll see at some point black is back in the game. We'll check this out, see if we can identify that point where I make a mistake. a5. So right here, I guess instead of giving up the pawn, yeah, I made a mistake in my calculations here. I thought I was winning the pawn back after a5 takes and rook to a7, but he can just push the pawn forward. So you'll see how that happens in the game. So if I just defend the pawn, say with rook a7, then looks like black is a bit tied up for a move here. If he moves the rook, then I play a5. If he moves f5, that's the other suggestion, I just take it. So he can't really advance these pawns. His king has no moves at all. He's just really tied up. So let's look at what might happen after rook d8. It's not Doesn't look like the best move, but it looks like he's just out of good moves. So I can push on with a5, b takes, rook takes. And this is the kind of the position I was envisioning in the line I chose. I played a5 immediately, but he just takes it. And after rook a7, he pushes on to a4. And now he's managed to keep this pawn alive. And so my advantage has just diminished quite a bit. But I still have some slight edge here, and I keep pushing forward on the king side, trying to create some space for my king to come forward. Maybe in retrospect, instead of pushing g5, it's possible I could have marched forward with the king. Now, I guess the problem is these squares are covered by the pawn, and this square is covered by his bishop, so my king can't make any progress. The engine is suggesting rook a5 is the way to go here. Well, that's an idea. Attacking both pawns. Having an active rook in the endgame is really key. So rook b4, he can't even defend that pawn. So he goes on the counterattack. And then I can grab on c5. Although this still, I have to be careful because he can push the pawn. So if I go immediately back to a5, it looks like this is about even. So I have to play rook c8 check. And rook c7 check and rook a7. Okay, a bit of a maneuver to put the rook on a dark square behind the pawn, so it can't be harassed by the bishop at an awkward time. And there's still some pull for white in this position. Okay, so I played g5 immediately, and maybe this liquidates a little bit too much because right here, this 0.28 advantage, this is probably not a winning advantage, so I think with best play, maybe black could go on and draw this game. But I still have an advantage, which is this pawn is, you know, it's far away from the finish line, but there's nothing really obstructing it, and I should be able to win a piece with it, or at least that's how I was thinking. Maybe with best play, black can fend it off. Anyway, he starts with rook g6 check, which is a good move, and this drives me back. I don't want to lose the pawn, so I have to actually move my king back to the pawn. And hold on to it that way. And then he goes rook b6. Now I get to start pushing my pawn forward. Rook to b1. No, rook to b3 check he played. Allowing my king to march forward. And then he went a3. Yeah, the chess engine likes rook b1 immediately, probably with the idea of getting on the first rank to help support this pawn promote. And now the immediate f5 is the quickest way to finish this. Yeah, it's going to be hard for him to stop the pawn from just promoting. I didn't think of that. I was trying to think of, I was trying to get my king in position to help the pawn promote, but when I make this king move, it allows him to start pushing the king around with his with his rook, and once again he's got this rook to g6 check. Although he went bishop b1 first, so he's got the pawn supported and he can move his a-pawn one step forward. Now I push forward with f5, so I block his bishop and prevent the rook from coming to g6 to check me. He pushes on to a2, so he's just one step away from queening, but my rook on a7 is on an excellent square to stop that. So the engine likes bishop f7 here as the way to continue. Bishop f7. I'm not sure why this is so great. It is true, his king has no real moves, and it gives bishop takes f5 as a way to play, but that doesn't seem likely. Suppose he just moves his rook, for example, here, just trying to keep up pressure. What's my threat? My threat is bishop to g6. So suppose he continues to do nothing. Actually, he can move his king now. Oh, there's a threat of checkmate. That's what's going on here. With the bishop on g6, I'm covering all of these squares with my king and my bishop, and he can't stop me from checkmating him. Okay, that's a neat tactic. So the idea here, the best way to play this is bishop to f7 to g6 and threaten checkmate. And after bishop f7, if the king tries to run, then bishop to g6 check anyway, and the king goes this way, it's checkmate. Nice. Okay, so there's almost a forced mate. He has to start throwing material away after, well, he played a2, after bishop f7 there. So I played king e6, didn't notice that mating theme. He goes rook e3 check, chases my king around some, and then I move my bishop in to protect the pawn. I'm still just focused on the on the idea of queening the pawn. It's important to keep in mind these mating themes when you have enough force around the enemy king and he's limited in space. But I'm pushing ahead with the pawn, and eventually I get to the point where he can't stop it, somewhere along here. So bishop e4 he played. King g7 is a recommended move to put up the toughest fight. And then bishop d5. Rook f2. Maybe it's still a bit tricky. I can round up this pawn. And then I have threats with two pawns coming forward to queen. Should be winning. Okay, he went bishop e4, and this loses pretty quickly after rook takes a2. Yeah, because he's given up control of the his trump card there, the a pawn. And then after this, there's a little bit of maneuvering, and then he runs out of time at this point. I just wanted to point out the tactic I had spotted during the game. If he moves his rook, for example, to attack a pawn, then I can take the bishop. And when he takes back, then I queen. And when he takes the queen, I end up just a piece up. So that's the way I was imagining the game would end. But actually right here, after king e7, he ran out of time. And that's how it ended. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.